I quite enjoy public speaking. In fact, I would say it's second only to writing as my favorite means of communicating with an audience. Now, I did theater when I was a young man, so I enjoyed being on stage, but of course, I always had a script. But after a couple times of public speaking, addressing audiences as myself, I realized I wanted to do so with as few notes as possible. And there were a couple of reasons for this. First, from a very practical reason, I never wanted to be reading what I was going to be saying because my eyes would be looking down instead of out. Also, I didn't want to be too wed to any kind of outline because I felt I would lose something inspired and magical that transpires in the moment when I'm tuned into the audience. There's always something unique that occurs as I look out and engage with the people who are there that day. Sometimes it's energetic, sometimes it comes from a question, or sometimes it's just something I notice in one or two people's faces that I respond to. And I always wanted to leave room for that, for the inspired moment. And so I knew I couldn't have too many notes. And if I had too many notes, I would just sort of block out the inspiration. Okay. So that was my approach to public speaking. And again, I realized this after just a few times. And so fairly early on, when I just started doing this regularly, I got invited to speak down in Eugene. And so I went down there and I got there kind of early. And so I was drifting. First, I had dinner and then I went to the bookstore where I was going to be talking. And and the people started filtering in. It was kind of like a theater almost the way they had it set up, this stage and a mic and podium. And all the people came in and there was a woman introducing me, or talking about the writing organization and then introducing me, and I meanwhile paced around in the shadows waiting for my time to speak. And as I did so, I had a thought I really never had prior to in my prior speaking engagements. Now, again, at this point, I knew what I was going to talk about, and I knew the subject, and I knew basically the order of the stories I was going to tell or the things I was going to talk about. But as always, I left plenty of room for just inspiration, including how I was going to start. Like I didn't have a script for how I was going to start off. And so there I was wandering around when all of a sudden I thought this: what if I get up there and I don't know what to say? What if I get up there and I'm just blank? I think to some degrees, I was flashing on the experience of writing when I sit down and I got nothing. And that's fine when I'm by myself in my room waiting for something to happen, but I'm going to be up there in the light behind that mic and I can't have nothing. I got to start talking when I get up there. And that thought came into my head. A small panic began to seize in my heart as I pictured myself there, mute, unspeaking, panic and stage fright. And as I began to go through this, projecting this nightmare scenario, I heard this voice in my head and it said, "You'll know what to say when you get there." And then in the next moment, the woman introducing me said, "And here he is, Bill Kenower." And I hopped up on stage and I was in the light. I saw the people and I spoke my first story. I did, in fact, know what to say when I got there. And I think it's really relevant for writers who go through a sort of stage fright around writing, because there is a performative nature to it. You will know what to say when you get there. It's just that there, in the case of writing, is not the desk so much or sitting in front of the computer. There is the story. In other words, or the poem, whatever it is, but we'll call it the story. When your attention meets the story, when you're actually in it, you will know what to say, but you won't know until you're in it. It's like trying to have a conversation before the person is there with you. A public speaking is like a conversation. Even though I'm the one doing the talking, the presence of the audience I am responding to it in a way that I don't fully understand intellectually. And just as when I am sitting with a person, I am responding to them. I'm responding not just to what they've said, but to how they're sitting and how they're listening and how they're responding to me. And the same is true of writing. There is a kind of response that's happening. I suppose you could say it's to the muse. It's to what is present at the moment where you actually are in your own creative journey at the moment you meet the story again. But you will know when you get there. You will know when you get there. And it's very important as a writer, as an artist, as a creative person, to trust in that you have to trust in the moment where creation happens. And that's where it's happening. As you sit down at the desk to tell your story, the creation is happening in that moment that you're present, that your mind has finally met the story you're telling. And once you're there, you'll know. You don't have to know beforehand any more than you have to know what you're going to say to a good friend before you sit down and talk with them. And a story is like a good friend. You love the story, but you don't know where it's going, but you love it. And it turns out that's all you need. Yeah. So I know that's the hard part. Public speaking for some people. Oh, that's the hard part, don't you? But you don't have to be a public speaker if you love writing. But the performative nature, I get it. It can be hard. It can be hard. So what's the hard part for you? I always want to know. And, if you don't want to miss a dose, as always, hit subscribe, baby. Hit subscribe. You won't miss. And if you like it, say so. Say so. I want to hear from you. So until next week, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.